Well, talking of drama, let's get the very latest then on this big developing story. World number one Novak Djokovic has trained in Melbourne just hours after a court overturned the decision by the Australian government to cancel his visa to enter the country. In the last few hours, Djokovic tweeted an image of him on court with his team in Melbourne. He says he wants to stay and compete at the Australian Open. He says, "I flew here to play at one of the most important events we have in front of the amazing fans." So, Becky's been across this story from the start. They've held this news conference today, didn't they? And it was all going rather well, but it did take a few twists and turns, so talk us through it.
It did. So this is an extraordinary story, isn't it? Every hour there's an update. And we thought this morning we had it all concluded when Djokovic won his appeal. But now it seems that we still don't have any answers. So let's just talk, shall we, a bit about this press conference. So we heard from his mother, his father and his brother. His mum had said that her son had been tortured. It had been an awful time for the whole family. I think when she said torture, she meant awful conditions within this immigration hotel that he'd been put up in, where he hadn't had the food that he's used to, perhaps not a view, looking outside, all within the four walls. You know, there have been guards on each floor, so it had been a very difficult, trying time for him. His father said that he'd had his legal rights taken away from him. He wasn't able to speak to his team, his lawyers, his friends. His mobile phone was taken away. So clearly it has been a very stressful few days for him, because he claimed he'd had this visa exemption. So we heard a bit more in this press conference from all of his family. Here's a bit of what his brother had to say.
It's been a battle for all of us. It's not just about Novak, obviously. We've been defending him every possible way we could, because we know he's a truthful and rightful guy, and he will never do anything to across any federal or state law anywhere in the world. Also, it's been really tough on us to defend him in every possible way and still do not offend anybody in this process, because we don't judge, and you know, we're all human and everybody makes mistakes, and that's okay. And we're not gonna judge on whoever or whatever, you know, they do. We're just gonna keep on going, and we're gonna fight for the truth and the justice. And I guess we just want to stand behind him.
Despite what he's been through, will that stop him in any way of becoming the world's greatest tennis player?
Never.
I'm sure it will not, because he's already the world's greatest player of all time. And it's not about, at the moment, and the whole process was not about tennis and tournament and Australian Open. It was more about the justice being pulled out and about the things that they did in there. And you know, we're grateful for the justice system of Australia, and I'm sure that, you know, the justice will go on, and the truth will, you know, be truthful all the way.
Do you have a message for Australia?
As our father and my father and stated on Serbian, we have just pure love for all the world. We love Australia. Novak loves Australia. He's won it so many times. We've been there so many times, and you know, we'll keep on coming back because we love that country. There's a lot of people from Serbia and all around the region in Australia, and we've got nothing but love. And we just have to thank all the people who have gathered in front of hotel where he stayed at for, you know, so many days, and today in front of the offices of his lawyers, for all of the support, for love and peace they've been sending to him, because that's one of the key points and one of the main reasons why we actually are sitting here today and why he actually won the case.
Now, one of the things I liked about that clip is when his mother was asked whether this whole saga was going to impact his son on the court, she said never. That wasn't even a consideration.
Yeah.
So she thinks that he will perform just as well as he would have done before. Now, this press conference, it was all going swimmingly until some of the tougher questions were asked. So there's a lot of questions around this December the 16th date. There are claims, obviously Novak Djokovic is saying he got this exemption because he tested positive for coronavirus on that date. But there's now been photographs circulated of him in public places, with children in the days following that date.
Giving out awards and things like that, wasn't
Exactly.
it? Yeah.
So there's no suggestion that he knew at that time that he tested positive, but still, people want to know the answers. And Novak Djokovic has always been slightly sceptical, I suppose, in public about vaccinations, but he has never come out and said whether he is vaccinated or not. Now, of course, we know. So that was one of the questions that a reporter asked his brother today about his vaccination status.
Novak has been called many names in many different press and countries around the world, but Novak is only fighting for the liberty of choice.
There we go. So he doesn't really answer the question, slightly skirting around it. And things got even more awkward when a reporter actually asked about these events that he'd been to when he was supposed to have coronavirus. So take a look at this one.
Is the truth that he was ill the 16th of December?
I'm sorry, is there a follow-up? Is there a follow-up question?
Is it true that on the 16th of December he did test positive and he knew he was positive?
Yes, the whole process was public, and all the documents that are public are legal, so...
Was he at an event on the 17th of December?
Okay, so this press conference is adjourned at the moment. Thank you for attention. Hvala svima još jednom što ste došli. Želimo vam sve najbolje. Hvala vam na podršci. Živio Novak i idemo po još jednu titulu.
Risto pusti.
As I say, that ended a little bit abruptly, didn't it? We kind of thought it was going to go on a little bit further, but I think they'd had enough and they weren't going to answer questions like that. I mean, obviously he's got medical privacy, but I guess is that the problem here? Is the fact that he hasn't been transparent, and a bit Kyrgios has come out and said, I want to be transparent and open, that I've just tested positive. You know, is that where Djokovic has fallen down, do you feel?
Yeah, I think people want to know a bit more detail about these dates, about things that he is suggesting about why he got this exemption. And you've got to bear in mind, in Australia they've had really, really stringent coronavirus lockdown rules, and so that is why a lot of people are very angry. But at the same time, you know, Djokovic has his supporters as well. We saw, you know, hundreds of them outside the court today, lots of them draped in the Serbian flag. The police had to get involved, some were pepper sprayed. So this is a story that's completely polarising opinions. But
yeah, it is, isn't it? I mean, we've seen him now today, haven't we? He's training. So what happens next? Is there a chance he still might not play in the Australian Open, do you think?
Things are still up in the air. I mean, we thought we had it sealed up when he won his case earlier on today. His visa was not going to be taken away, but now we hear that in Australia, the immigration minister has this special power to deport him if he wants. It's not used very often. It's usually, when it is used, to protect Australian citizens, but he's got a bit of time to think about this, so that's what we're waiting on now. The Australian government have been very strong in their words against Novak Djokovic. Will they keep it up, or will they feel that now he's won this case and the judge has decided in favour of Djokovic that they have to row back a bit? But there's so many questions, and obviously the Australian Open only a week away, so it's not long. Novak Djokovic wanting to get another Grand Slam title. That is what this is all about. He said that that is the reason he wants to compete. But even then, if he does compete, how much of an impact has this had on him? His mother doesn't seem to think it will have any impact. But nonetheless...
Mother would say that, maybe.
Yeah, perhaps. And then you've got the Australian crowds. How will they receive him? How will his other players receive him as well? Because we know that a couple are not too happy about what's happened.
Oh, it's a fascinating story, isn't it? I'm sure it'll rumble on a little bit more. Thanks, Becky, for now. OK, let's show you some pictures then, because a car believed to be carrying Djokovic was mobbed by supporters, as Becky was saying, as it left his lawyer's office earlier today. The judge, considering the case, ordered the world number one's release within half an hour of the decision, with the Australian government ordered to pay legal costs. Now, Djokovic's lawyers argued there was no more he could do in order to provide further information on his medical exemption to play in the Australian Open. Chaotic scenes there, of course, and they continued as police used pepper spray to try to disperse the crowd. People were seen washing their eyes with water here.
What happened? Pepper spray.
We are hearing that
governments can still make a decision and send him home. So the courts have done their job and the government is now going to do their job. Well, where are these people standing? Where are the supporters standing? Where is Novak standing?
There shouldn't have been a court case in the first place. I feel, he had an exemption from doctors here in Australia. I feel there shouldn't have been, this whole thing in the first place. I think he should have just come here and played.
It's good results. Yeah, fantastic. Hopefully stay like that. No changes.
OK, let's get more on this story. Let's speak live to the Serbian Tennis Journal, Sasha Djokovic, who's in Belgrade, where the Djokovic family news conference took place. Thank you so much for joining us, Sasha. I mean, fair to say, it was quite emotional, wasn't it? Djokovic's mother claiming her son has been a victim of torture. How did it come across to you?
It was, I think it was more of a harassment. Maybe something got lost in the translation. Yeah. But yes, it was emotional. By all means, and yes, that's more or less it. Let's just wait and see what the Minister for Immigration decides. Before that, we don't really know yet if Djokovic is going to play at the Australian Open. Her mother, whom you just mentioned, said that she hopes for the best and the matter be resolved as it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to you last week, Sasha, and I think you were, fair to say, quite angry as to how he'd been treated. You felt, certainly, that he'd been treated completely differently to anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, as I said, I think last week it was a political game, I can't understand, I've seen all that you put on the screen now, and I can't understand why the anger of Australian people because of the lockdown measures and why is it directed towards a tennis player? I mean, it's not Djokovic who came up with these rules. They could have just as easily say, okay, vaccination, you can play, no vaccination, you can't play with no exemptions, and that would be the end of story, and players would have to face that choice right now. But Djokovic played by Australian rules. He got exemption from 2 independent medical panels, Victoria State Government and Tennis Australia. So I don't really think there is much to hold against him. But I just feel with time that this will blow over, and I know that Novak has had a tremendous reception in Melbourne throughout the years, and I know he loves Australia. So hopefully they can get past this.
Well, let's talk about that. You think it's going to blow over. We spoke to the former British #1, Andrew Castle. He actually felt that kind of Djokovic doesn't need this. And for him, he might just say, do you know what, enough's enough, and go home. Do you think there was ever a sign of that, of Djokovic actually backing down and said, do you know what, I don't need this?
Actually, I thought about it. I did not think it was unrealistic to happen, but we have all seen his Twitter post where he stated that he's here to compete. I guess there is going to be some consequences. I mean, he's been out of his usual routine 5 days, and those are different routines compared to yours and mine, because he lives a totally different life with his stretching, meditation, yoga, strict diet, and all those other things that make him an elite athlete that he is. And this kind of pressure, although he has faced a lot of hardships throughout his life, I don't think this can be compared to anything, because it's not just the sports niche, the tennis niche. It's like he has the whole country on his shoulders, and I can only imagine how tough was it for him mentally the last few days. So I don't really think, I think his chances at the Australian Open are diminished by this. And in the ideal conditions, he had a very tough competition, primarily with Medvedev and Zverev. So let's see if he even plays. If he even plays, then we can talk more about tennis, I guess.
Yeah, and just finally on that sort of subject, do you think that could this, impair his kind of going forward? Do you think that that'll be it for Australia Open? Do you think he just, after this, if he does indeed play in this one, do you think he could just think, you know what, next year, no way?
I can't see that happening. I mean, we live in a crazy world right now, and we're all a bit crazy, I must say. So I think eventually, and hopefully this pandemic will be over one day, hopefully until the end of the year. So there will be no need for these types of discussion. But honestly, if he's playing this year after everything he's been through right now, I really can't see him missing it next year if the circumstances are okay.
Sasha, I want to take you back to the news conference because you were very much involved in part of it. You know, you were watching it with us there. There was a request for the Queen to step in and help Novak Djokovic. Can you tell us more what happened there? What was that about?
To be honest, I don't know. I think it was meant half as a joke. He didn't really expect for Queen to interfere. But just emphasizing the gravity of the situation, you know.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll take your word for that. Look, it was like you say, it was a bit of an emotional roller coaster, wasn't it? And it was going quite well, and it felt like it was still happening, and then it was brought to a very abrupt end as soon as the family were questioned about this PCR test and his whereabouts, you know, after that PCR test resulted in a positive result. Could that be an issue for him, do you feel?
I don't think it can be a legal issue, or I'm sure it can't be a legal issue because, as you mentioned previously, because of the medical privacy, and I know Novak is not obliged to reveal anything about his medical chart, and that is something him and his brother in the last few days have been emphasizing a lot. But that being said, I can imagine that one of the first questions in the press conference before the Australian Open is going to be that. So we'll just have to wait and see his reaction on will he talk about it, will he offer an explanation, will he just stick to say, oh, it's in the legal case. I really can't tell at the time.
Just two more questions, Sasha. I just want to ask you about that because I think in terms of like the transparency and the fact that Novak didn't come out, I mean, it has come out now and we know that he hasn't been vaccinated, but the fact that he didn't come out and say this, but obviously he's been very vocal about mandatory vaccinations and he's been pretty vocal about the fact that he's not very pro a vaccination. Do you think this is where it all went horribly wrong for Novak, the fact that he hasn't been very clear about the situation, or can you not see that side of it at all?
Well, I can see, but I think it's going to be more. How shall I put this? It's going to be more of an issue in the coming months, you know, because from what I've been hearing, there is going to be a vaccine mandate at a lot of tournaments. So he did not engage with that topic quite a lot in the past. He said something at the beginning of the pandemic when we didn't even have the vaccine, but since then he's been quiet on it. So of course there is a choice ahead of him. Now we know that he isn't vaccinated, and if there is a vaccine mandate at the most of the big tournaments, I mean, that's all you need to know. I mean, he's going to have to make a choice at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, I did say finally, so I just will ask you one cheeky last question. You know, we know what he's like. He's pretty stubborn. He's pretty good at this game, isn't he? Do you feel he's the type of character that's going to use all this and use this frustration to go on and become the most successful tennis player of all time? Do you think he could win it?
I feel like he is already the most successful player of all time. I think that the numbers show it, to be honest. And I'm not saying it because I'm his countryman. I would say it if the numbers were the opposite in favor of Nadal and Federer. That being said, usually if it was some usual trouble, you know, clashes with the media or, you know, crowd against him, you know, that usual stuff, I would say that it would make him stronger. I would like to think that this will make him stronger as well. But as I previously mentioned, I'm not so sure, you know, because it's been such a different kind of pressure. You know, it's almost becoming a diplomatic incident, and all the outlets throughout the world, it's like the top story of the day, not top sports story of the day, but top story of the day. That's it. So we'll see, you know, we'll see how physically and mentally prepared he is. We have to take in mind that he had a long season before this that ended on the 5th of December, short break. So who knows? I guess we'll see when the tournament begins.
Yeah, we'll see how that crowd reacts to him, won't we? Oh, it's so good to get your thoughts. Thank you so much, Sasha, for joining us again.